What's up, everybody? Welcome to this thing. We're going to start here in just a minute. I'm joined by Elly and Darrin, the
Hey everyone.
fantastic Elly and Darrin. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I feel kind of like a faker a little bit because like we've been talking offline for a minute before we start. So like I've already like asked how you guys are doing, and then we start this thing of like, "Hey, fancy to see you here. How are you?" But like
Is it
in
an
reality,
illusion?
yeah. Smoke and mirrors. We really know how the others are doing. But welcome. Thanks for joining us. We got some exciting stuff here. This is the last week in our month on Cinema 4D Lite for After Effects users. And we got some really exciting stuff today. We're going to be talking about tracking data, sending tracking data from After Effects, tracking 3D camera stuff to Cinema. So you don't have to necessarily know how to do 3D tracking in Cinema in order to track your shots. And also we're going to be talking about the differences between Cinema 4D Lite and Cinema 4D, like the full deal. And we have a few other tricks on rendering and some surprises along the way. So that's pretty much the overview of the day. But it's the last time we're going to be doing this. Guys, this is
I
always like
know.
tragic and
I'm always
sad.
sad when it's the last one.
I know. It like gets more and more fun each time we do these things. And it feels
Yeah.
more and more like summer camp and more like tragic when it's over. But because we have a lot to get to, I'm going to just do the housekeeping, get that out of the way. We're filling in for Simon today. Shout out to Simon. He's like on vacation, or as he would say, holiday. And so we're filling in for him the best we can. So just a couple things to be aware of. If you go to the Maxon website, maxon.net, and you go to the news thing here, news button, I guess you'd call it, and then you go to events. You could see under events all of the amazing workshops, including Wednesday. Elly is going to start this amazing series on Redshift, starting from scratch, hands-on. So it's going to be all month of February on Wednesdays, starting from just scratch to making pure total magic in just a few weeks with Elly. So we are all like insanely excited for that.
I love that description, by the way. I'm here for that description.
What description was that? Oh, that you're making magic?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's true though. That's accurate.
We'll do our
I don't
best.
want to get like, in trouble legally for not and then there's also, of course, the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, and that's where all these videos go. So yes, today is being recorded, and soon after we're done here today, we're going to be posting this session. Good reminder to watch what I'm saying, and then we're going to be posting that to the YouTube channel. So you can find it there later, along with tons of other like tips and other kinds of all the other sessions for everything that we've done. And that's all there. And then also, if you're a fan of clothing, there is in the GoToWebinar little control thingy where you have questions if you want to ask them. There's also handouts. And in the handout area, there's a PDF. And in that PDF, there's a link to some of the files from the stuff we've done this month. And there's also a link to get a free t-shirt. So you have to, it's a two-factor thingy. You have to like click on the secret link in the PDF, and then you have to use the secret code in the PDF to get into that website as well. And then once you're there, you can get one free shirt from Maxon, and you just have to pay for shipping, which is like $3-4 or €3-4 or whatever. It's about that. You just have to pay for shipping, and you get a free shirt, and it's pretty magic. Okay. Is that it, guys? Did I do everything right? It's not
Think so.
right, everything
Yeah.
right, but
That was
did I miss
everything.
anything? Okay, so then let's hop over into After Effects. I have this shot, and so that you wouldn't have to sit and wait for me to do this, I just went ahead and I right-clicked on the clip and went to track and stabilize and went to track camera. And so that automatically applied this 3D camera tracker effect, and that has been tracked. And then I also went in after it was tracked, and I clicked on the create camera button. So now I have a 3D camera tracker with the tracking data from this shot.
Sorry to
And
interrupt.
this is, do it.
So like, can you let us know what you're showing us here? Like the end goal. What's the end goal?
Yes, thank you very much. So the end goal is that, like, I want to be able to put something from Cinema 4D. I want to be able to have Cinema 4D understand the tracking data that I have here in After Effects. So you can do like 3D camera tracking in Cinema, but it's a little bit more complex and a little bit more like you got to know a few more things. And so being able to have a camera in Cinema that matches your camera footage is really helpful, but it's a little challenging to set up in Cinema. And so with this setup, you can track the data in After Effects very easily like this, and then take that camera that's like moving around and track your footage and send it over to Cinema. Thank you, Darrin, for pointing out that thing that I should have explained. I'm like trying to hurry to get to you and Elly because you guys have the cool stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
But thank you for slowing me down. I appreciate that. Sorry for the confusion, everybody. Okay, so we have the After Effects camera. Does that make sense?
Yes, to me it does.
Okay, good. So we have this 3D camera tracker. That's our 3D tracked camera. And so that we don't have to track in Cinema, I want to send this camera over to Cinema. So what I did, I went to File, New, Maxon Cinema 4D file, and then I just wanted just like a dumb simple sphere just to show you. So I just called it dumb sphere. And so what I could do is add this to my comp. It applies the Cineware effect. And what's kind of cool, I'm just going to change the renderer to current so that we can see like a better version of this thingy here. And if I go over to Cinema, we can see the dumb sphere, and that's all that's in our scene here. So in After Effects, what I need to do is change the camera settings from the Cinema 4D camera, because if I'm just using the Cinema 4D camera, then it's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. But if I'm using a comp camera, and there is a comp camera, both of those things are active. So in other words, the camera is comp camera, and there is the comp camera in my scene. Then the comp camera into Cinema button is here. And all I have to do is click merge, and then it says the After Effects camera was merged into the Cinema 4D project. So then I can go back over to Cinema and wait a second, or maybe I need to like reload it. I think I just need to like wait a second though, right? That's anticlimactic. Let me see if I can, I'll just like close it and reopen it. Dumb sphere, and there we go. So there's the AE tracker camera. It's like, oops, that's not what I want to do. So there's the AE tracker camera that's in our scene with all the tracking data from After Effects. And you can see the movement is very subtle at this level, but if I move this here, you could see the camera is moving around, and it has the tracking information from our shot in there. So now I can place the sphere in the right spot, and it can be tracked when we go back to After Effects here. So I save this, go back to After Effects, and then my sphere can show up in my shot here, and we can, I mean, it's kind of like placing it in 3D space is kind of a little bit more of a challenge. We have to go back and forth, but the data is there in Cinema, which is a really great thing to be aware of just from clicking that little comp camera into Cinema button. Okay, that's all I wanted to show, and now we can hand over to Darrin.
Actually, before you hand it over, Chad,
yes.
You know how to like create a ground plane with that After Effects tracker?
Create a ground plane with the After Effects tracker?
Yeah.
Oh, like in the 3D camera effect?
Yeah. Yeah, you can like create a ground plane and a camera, and then you can actually save a Cinema 4D file, right? And you actually might have done that. I was sort of opening up files on my end. But you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, the ground plane and origin.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. And
Okay, let's click OK.
yeah, and once you get like the ground plane and the After Effects camera in here, then you know, you do file, and then I think it's under export in the file. Yeah, export. That's
Oh,
the exporter.
I've
And
never played with this.
yeah, and that
Wow.
will create just a regular old Cinema 4D file with literally a plane and a camera with that tracking data. And
No way.
yeah, yes way, Bill.
That's amazing. Thanks,
Yes, way.
Darrin.
You are
See,
welcome.
look at teamwork. By teamwork, I mean you do everything, and I just get impressed. That's what I contribute to the situation. Well, thanks for showing me that. That's cool. I got something else to play with now.
Awesome.
Let me send it over to you, and you can dazzle us with wonderful things.
I'll try. I'll see what I can do.
Oh, I mean, you've already done it. So I mean, you could just like retire at this point because you've already done the thing. All right, are we seeing Darrin's screen? I think we are, right? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so
we are.
So let's hide
peace out.
to webinar stuff. So you guys should see this this file from last week. It's my Lite and broadcasting example. Now here I actually have it open in the full Cinema 4D R25 because I want to show you a really great workflow if you're coming from the full version that you can take advantage of, which we cannot do with Lite. And this is really great for teams of mixed Cinema 4D artists. So where some are on the full version and some are using Lite. So this can, you know, this was originally the Lite file that I just opened up in 25. And what I want to do is I want to actually pre-render everything so that in After Effects, I can do all the post work I want, and it'll be much quicker because After Effects won't have to render everything. It's already rendered. Now, there's a unique workflow we have, and it actually takes advantage of a special type of file, compositing project file. So, you know, you set up your regular render and your multi-pass render, and here I've defined a number of multi-passes that I know that I want, as well as the object buffers. Okay, and I believe in last week I showed how to set up the object buffers and how to specify some objects to be output with their 3D data with the external compositing tag. So that's in last week's recording. So yeah, so we set up all those passes. In the save settings, we define the file format and the path, and we unfold compositing project file, enable save, make sure it's on After Effects, and I'm including the 3D data. And then when this is rendered out, it's going to save that special compositing project file, which I'm going to show you in a minute, with all of the renders. Now you can save the file independently without the renders, but that's, you know, that's not what I'm going for here. So now I did have a Supercomp version of this file with the glows and everything. It's having some difficulty. I'm going to have to figure that out. So for now, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to show you that AEC workflow. So in the folder where I rendered everything, I have a folder named AEC workflow, and there is this special .aec file. And I'm just going to drag that in to After Effects. And what it's giving me is all of those passes and all of the and a little composition here, which I'll go ahead and double click to open. And what we're going to see is we're going to get all of the same data, but everything is pre-rendered. So when I jump to another frame, After Effects is not rendering it through Cineware. It's already rendered. And this is a much faster way of working directly in After Effects. So I do still need to replace the screens. I'm just going to do one of them today for the sake of time. So I'm going to go ahead and import, let's see, Simon here. I'm going to alt-click drag to replace that footage. I'm going to go in the material options and turn off the shadows and lights and adjust the size of this. And then with this AEC workflow, the LumaMat or object buffer is actually located under special passes. Now I want to point out here that when I opened up that composition, it actually I got all the 3D data and everything, but it also took all of the rendered passes, it stacked them up and assigned the appropriate blending mode. So, it's like totally automated, which is really great. Saves a ton of time and guesswork there. So, but the object buffer, LumaMat, I need to bring in from the special passes, and I know that this screen is object 1. So let's go ahead and get that in there. We'll set the LumaMat, and let's go forward a couple frames. There we go. And this I want to be in add so that I get those reflections underneath. Now, what I really want to show you, aside from this AEC workflow, is Knoll Light Factory to get some cool flares on the lights here. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer on top. So we'll go new adjustment layer. I'll just drag that all the way up and name it Knoll. And then I'm going to find the effect Knoll Light Factory. There's a couple of different Knoll Light plugins, but I'm going to use the full Knoll Light Factory, drag that on to that adjustment layer. Now, we can see that it's automatically got this flare, right? And I can drag this around and put it wherever I want, but I actually want it to be assigned to these lights. And this is why I added these lights to the file in Cinema 4D Lite, so that they would come through here, and then I can say in Knoll Light Factory to actually use the lights, and I've given them a unique name, spotlight underscore, then 1, 2, 3, left, right. All I need to do is enable use lights, and then click on this light source naming name. And now I can say, let's use the name spot space light underscore, and I don't have to do anything for the numbers. It'll automatically use all the lights with those characters in it. Now the problem I have is that I'm actually seeing the flares that are from the lights behind the screen. So we have this obscuration layer which we can use. Now Hashi was kind enough to create a mask for me. So I'm going to import that. Here we go. And if we check it out, you can see it just contains the screens, and that's it. So I'm going to add that on top of the Knoll Light Factory and hide it. And then in the Knoll Light Factory controls, I'm going to set the obscuration layer to that layer. And then I want it to actually use the, I think, luminance, or maybe it's in inverse luminance. There we go. So now you can see these 3 lights. We do not see them, but we do see the flares on the lights that are, not behind or on the screen. Now let's see, there's another really cool feature of this, and that is the designer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to click on this little left arrow, just hovering over it opens up this panel with all of these really awesome presets. And I'm just going to go all the way down to the bottom. And whenever we see, is it doing the hover over thing? Maybe eventually, but I'm going to go with this panamorphic, or maybe simple headlight. Let's try panamorphic. So I'm just going to click on that, and it's pretty intense, but I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here, and that updates. So a couple things I want to do is I'm going to bring the brightness down. Okay, and then maybe the scale is a little big. Maybe I can bring the scale of them down. There we go. And that's Knoll Light Factory. With the AEC workflow, I can press, do a little RAM preview, and this is much quicker than doing the Cineware layers, where every frame, it's going to have to render all of those layers individually. So it's, yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that. Were there, Elly, Chad, were there any questions about anything that I just did?
There was one on the transition between the flare, but I think you showing how it's playing is probably answering that question. Isaac was just wondering, basically, what's the transition between a flare being visible and being hidden behind the screen? Is it a smooth change, or does it disappear drastically?
So there are some controls for that. Let's see, so edge reaction, I believe, is edge of the whole frame. But I believe by adjusting like the source size and threshold, and I don't know, maybe there's some other settings, we can adjust how that sort of fades as it's obscured. But I'm, this is such a, like, I'm showing you the easy jump in and, start applying the effects. There are other people that are much more familiar with the depth of this plugin and would be able to answer that. So unfortunately, my answer is it's in there, but I'm not sure where to go. Yeah.
Also, just to add to that, like, the lens flares in real life, the way that kind of works in camera is that there kind of like isn't that much of a transition in real life. So if like a light was obscured, there'd just be like a frame or two between when the light was obscured versus when it bounces off of all the internal workings of the lens and creates a flare like this. So it wouldn't be supernatural if there was like a lot of control between the flaring and not flaring, because in real life it just kind of happens in an immediate way. This looks amazing, by the way. Since I'm talking, it looks great. I love this.
Thanks, Chad. Let's see. Was there something else that I've been? You guys have been so preoccupied with this morning, I forgot if there was something else that I was going to show right now. You guys, what am I missing?
I think you just like mentioned Supercomp, that you can we can composite this in Supercomp, but I don't think we need to show it or anything.
Yeah. So you know what? Let's do that. Let me, because there is something that we need to be aware of if we are using Supercomp with 3D layers. So I'm going to take the screen, it's Luma Matte, and actually that camera, and I'm gonna copy, paste, and then I'm going to pre-comp those. So I'll call this screen 1. So I need to do this with this 3D layer, so that I can get this single layer into Supercomp. So let me drag that down here, and we'll turn that off. Oh, that's null. Excuse me. Undo. Here we go. Oh, there we go, screen one. Okay, so we'll drag that right there. Let's turn that guy off. Okay, cool. So I'm going to add Supercomp to this. Let's see how this will play out. Supercomp, and I believe there's something I actually have to do on this nested composition here. I actually need to enable this little option here. This what's this called? It collapses the transformations. So I need to enable that. And then in Supercomp, I'll open up the panel, which I've docked right here. And this I actually want to be additive. And when we choose one of these layer types, it actually changes what types of effects are available to us. So I only have those effects which are designed to work with an additive layer. I'm going to go to a preset, and like I'm going to go with, let's see, let's go with screen like, and let's also go add a big glow onto it, and that may be a bit much. So I think I will go into its settings and, I don't know, turn down the size a bit. And this sort of looks odd here in my preview. And maybe this is the order that this is sitting in. Chad, maybe you can help me out. Do I need to change the blending mode itself here?
I'm so sorry. I was answering questions in the chat. What was this?
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing in the you know, active camera here in the composition preview. I'm not seeing the results I expect, and I wonder if that's because I don't have all of these other layers in Supercomp.
Yeah, well, yeah, right now all of that Supercomp is working with is that screen one layer, and also your Supercomp composite is beneath your other, I guess it's just beneath camera layers, huh? But because it's not at the top of the stack, sometimes whatever else is on top of it is going to obscure it. So yeah, as you add things to the Supercomp blender, as it were, then it kind of gives permission for those things to interact. Whereas if they're not in Supercomp, then they don't have permission to play with each other,
So
for lack of a more appropriate expression.
Yeah, so I've added all of those layers in there, and it's automatically assigned additive to these where necessary. Some of these, however, do have a multiply blending mode, and those, you know, we don't really want to see here. So there we go. That's more what I was looking for. I think the best solution here would be to pre-comp those layers and then have these two separate things. So that would be like selecting, let's see, is that the last one? Is that, yeah, diffuse.
I totally agree. That another thing to remember about Supercomp, you might have already said this, but when I was answering questions, but like Supercomp is meant to be like the last thing that you do. It's supposed to be like the last step in the pipeline. So like everything should be built. And so a lot of times you do have to pre-compose like this, which is annoying. But if it's the last step in your workflow, then it's not as annoying. You know, if this is kind of like the last thing that you're doing, then it's not that frustrating.
Okay, so I'm putting it here on an adjustment layer, which I haven't tried before. I usually put it directly on a layer, and I'll get the base renders and then screen one. And then screen one is additive. There we go. And then I'll assign that big glow to it. And oh, interestingly, we lost a bit of the oh, I need to enable that maybe. Anyway, I lost a bit of the Lumimat. So I'm sure that has everything to do with my workflow here, because I'm trying to show something that I'm learning. But you can see that I'm getting some really gorgeous glow, even at default. You know, I mean, it's a bit big, right? So we can turn that down. We can reduce the amount to make it less distracting. But yeah, I think that's the After Effects in Cinema 4D AEC workflow stuff that I wanted to show. Am I missing anything?
Oh, that's
No,
fantastic, man.
That was really cool.
Also, we're like doing really good on time. This is great. Like we're right where we should be, which is really rare and exciting.
Oh God, now you've said that,
Sorry, Elly, I
I'm
cursed
gonna be
you.
like panicking, like keep on time.
No, you're great.
Sweet, cool. Is it am I taking over? Yes. Let me show my screen. Where am I? There I am. Cool. Oh, thanks for that, Darrin.
Yes,
That's
yeah,
really
good
cool.
job.
There's a bunch of questions as well about Knoll in the chat that could be answered as well. People had a few good questions on that.
I'll check them out.
I'm doing stuff too.
Cool.
Cool.
Cool. Right. So yeah, so along the topic of the differences between Cinema 4D Lite and the main version, in the second week of this demystifying series, I showed the possibilities with the MoGraph tools that are inside of Lite. And so I thought I would take that a step further and show the possibilities inside of the full version using a bit of a MoGraph and dynamics combination. And yeah, we're going to create like a fun little animation. We're going to build it from scratch, hopefully in the next 15 minutes. And so let me just switch my camera off so you guys can see everything that I'm doing. Oh, my computer nearly frozen. Cool, right, so let me show the actual animation. I think I've got a render here somewhere. Here we go, this is it here. And I'm just gonna kick this off. As you can see, we just have this like text bouncing around, and then we have these spheres come down and we have some collision and they interact with each other and they're bouncing over the place. And it's just gonna be like a nice fun animation using some of the MoGraph tools that we didn't have inside of Lite, but it's still going to use some of the stuff that we learned in that second week when we looked at creating text with splines and the extrude. And then we also looked at like the fracture and some introduction to our effectors. So let's go, we don't need this. So this is what it looks like inside of the viewport. So let's just build this. I'm going to move this guy out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. So I've got a whole new scene. Let me just turn off my work plane because I find it gets in the way a little bit. And we're going to start off just by creating some text. And so inside the full version, we have a couple of different ways of creating text. We have the way that we did before, where we make our text spline, or we have this text object, which you can see comes in as full 3D geometry. I'm going to build it with the text spline, and I'll explain why later on. But we get a different result depending on how we build our text. So let's get in here, and I'm just going to write, we're going to create the exact same thing. So TGI Friday, even though it's Monday, we'll do TGI Friday. And I just want some nice chunky text, some chunky looking font. Let's get Futura, and we'll put it into the middle. And this first spline is actually just going to be my base, because I'm going to create TGI and Friday as separate objects. And so this base spline is going to let me know where exactly to position both of them. So let me just command click and drag to then duplicate this. And then let's just write TGI for this one, and then we'll write Friday for this one. Cool. So in my little 4 views, I just like to come to my front view here, and I'm just going to position these like, roughly. It doesn't need to be 100% accurate. It can be good enough. That's my motto. Cool, right, so now I can delete this original one because we don't need that anymore. It was just to give us an idea of where things needed to go. And so we have TGI and we have Friday. So now we need to turn this into geometry, and we're using the exact same technique that we did in the second week, where we use the extrude generator. So if we look inside of this menu, we had access to, I believe, subdivision surface, and I think maybe these ones here, I'm pretty sure, and maybe like connect an instance or something like that. And so as you can see in the full version, we have a whole load more, but we're not really worried about those. We just want to extrude this and turn it into geometry. So with both of my text splines selected, I'm just going to use a little shortcut for this just for ease. I'm going to hold my Option key and I'm going to select my extrude. And basically all that does is it puts the text spline as a child of my extrude. So that was a handy little shortcut there. Cool. So if I just select both my extrudes, if I can select the right button, that would be great. My webcam is perfectly positioned over what I need. So I'm just going to come into here. Let me just do a little cap on there, and then I'll do a cap on here. And all I'm doing is I'm adding some rounding to here. I'm adding like a bevel on there, which we went through last time, so we don't need to go into too much detail about that. Cool, right, so what is the next step? The next step now is I actually want to drop this into a MoGraph generator, and I'm going to drop it into a fracture. And then we're going to basically create loads of them by using a cloner. And so some people might be thinking, well, how come you don't just drop these straight into a cloner? And that's because with the MoGraph tools is you will get different results depending on which generator your effector is on. And so I'll demonstrate this as well. And so what I want to do, I'm going to drop these two into my fracture. And that was actually the MoGraph generator that we had inside of C4D Lite. So we have access to this already. But as you can see, full version, a whole load more that are really fun to play with. So if I grab my fracture, I'm just going to drop both my TGI and my Friday text into that fracture. And what I need to do, I need to make sure I change my mode from straight to explode segments. And so now this is MoGraph geometry. So I could now use my effectors on it, sort of like we did in week 2. However, first of all, I want to create a whole load of them. So if we have a look in our original project file, you can see we've got loads of them here. And we can create that really easily with the cloner. And the cloner is probably one of the most powerful tools inside of the full version of C4D. And if you did want to know more about it and know more kind of like about what you can do with MoGraph, if you head over to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, the hands-on with Maxon beginners workshop part 5 is 2 hours on MoGraph, and it has a whole like section on the cloner. So if you do want to know more, definitely check that out. So let's grab my cloner, and I'm going to put this whole setup inside of my cloner. So we can see now we've started to get some more geometry. We've basically cloned our text. And we've cloned it in a grid, and we have a 3x1x3 grid. I actually want to change my mode just slightly. I'm going to change it to honeycomb. And honeycomb is a similar kind of thing. We still get a grid. What you'll notice is we then get a 50% offset. So it's looking a bit weird at the moment because the geometry is overlapping with each other. So let's just fix that. Let's come into my front view so we can see everything. And I'm just going to adjust my size width. So if I just pull this over, you can see that we're kind of pulling those apart so we no longer have that overlapping. Cool, right, so how many do we want? Let's maybe do something like this. Yeah, cool, that works. So far we've created our text geometry. So we made our spline, then we returned it into geometry, and then we dropped it into a fracture. And then we've dropped that fracture into a cloner to create a whole load of clones of our text. And then now what we can do, we can add some animation using some of our effectors. But first of all, just to be kind of some lazy convenience, I'm actually just going to rotate my whole cloner setup 90 degrees. There we go. Cool. So I'm gonna have a little like angle looking down on it. So I like this. This one can be like my centered text. Cool. Really quickly, let me just change my offset to -500. And this is going to just hide that base. So it's sort of a nice way of like faking a background just by increasing the offset or the depth of our text. Cool, right, so this is where I'm going to show you the difference between putting an effector on the cloner versus the fracture. So I'm going to start off by actually putting it on the cloner. So I'm going to have that selected, that particular MoGraph generator. Let's just get rid of those for now. And I'm going to come into my effectors. So inside of C4D Lite, we have a plane effector and we have a random effector. As you can see, we have a bunch more here. But these two alone, you can still create some really interesting results. But what I'm going to go for is something called a Formula Effector. So if I select that, we can see everything goes super crazy. And basically what's happening is we have a mathematical formula that is looking at the parameters that we've set up, so our position, scale, and rotation. And it's also looking at our project time and frequency. And so if you want to know the ins and outs of exactly how this maths work, you can just right-click, show help, and we have online documentation where you can read all about the different things. You can look at the different possible formulas here, and you can, brush up on your math skills. Cool, so what I'm going to do, so the reason it looks so chaotic at the moment is because we have position and we have scale affecting our text. Let me just switch off scale because we don't really need to do that. But we do want some position because we want them to be moving sort of up and down a little bit. So this is going to sound a little bit strange. I actually need to adjust the position on my z-axis. And the reason for that is because, remember, we rotated our cloner. So normally our up and down would be y, but as you can see, because we've actually rotated our cloner, we need to put the value into our z-axis. And so what I'm going to do, I don't need to set up any keyframes because my mathematical formula is now going to animate my text based on these parameters and this project time and frequency. So let me just increase this so I don't have to worry about it kind of like ending. So now we've got some sort of like automatic animation with no keyframes. But there's a couple of things that I'm not too happy with. First of all, it is way too fast. So all we need to do is adjust my frequency to 0.4 so we have it nice and slow. There we go. Cool. So the biggest difference between this original animation and this one here is because the Formula Effector is on our cloner, it's taking each individual set of TGI Friday text and animating those with an offset. So what you'll notice is the TGI and the Friday of every other line are coming up separately. But what I want is I want the TGI and then the Friday to be animating separately. And this is where choosing where we put our effector can have a big difference. So if I come into my cloner, into my effectors, I'm going to delete my formula. So I'm going to delete my effector. And instead, I'm going to go into my fracture, which is my other MoGraph generator. And I'm going to drop my formula into there. And now what we notice is we get a completely different result. So the other thing I do want to do is inside my formula, my project time is set to 1. And so if you look closely, what's happening is everything is moving in this direction. So our Y is coming up first and then our T is coming up last. I want it the other way around. So all I have to do is set that to -1. And then now you'll notice we're getting that the other way around. Cool, so we've set up our initial MoGraph animation, and just for speed, and so it looks a little bit prettier on this live session, I'm actually just going to drop some textures on here. Great, so we've created our initial MoGraph animation. Now what we want to do is we want to create these bouncing spheres that are going to come down, and we're going to use some dynamics and some collision, and they're going to interact and bounce around when they hit our text. So the way that we can do this, let me just really quickly add a camera. And the reason for this is when we come out of here, I'm going to be able to see exactly where it is sort of pointing to, because I want to make sure I place my spheres above this area so they fall down to there. So I'm just doing this for just to make life a bit easier for me. So let's start off by creating some spheres. So all we want is a couple of spheres with a radius of 20, and I'm going to duplicate them twice. And the reason I'm doing this, because I'm going to clone them all together, is actually just for ease when it comes to texturing. So because I have 3 different spheres, I can very easily make them my 3 different colors that I want. And again, we're going to clone everything. So if I just drop them all inside my cloner, and if I just raise my cloner up, we can see we now have a 3x1x3 grid of spheres. And let's just, I think I ended up with something like 6x5, not by 56, by 6. And let's just put these a bit closer together. So now we have this grid of spheres, but they're looking a little bit uniform. It's not like as varied as it could be. And so let's add some variation in like position, so they fall differently, and also in size, just so they look a bit more interesting. So with my cloner selected, I'm going to come in and I'm going to use our Random Effector. And already we can see that it's adjusting our position. So our spheres have slightly moved a little bit, and that's because inside my parameter, I have my position on my X, Y, and Z set to 50 centimeters. So we can move them and it will randomize up to this value. So we can sort of do this and maybe like this. These are just some random values. We can be more specific if we want to, but for the sakes of this, I don't really need to be. And I'm also going to adjust the uniform scale. Let's go like 0.5. So now we have some nice random variation between the position and the size of my spheres. So some of the, and what's nice is because we have these 3 different ones in here, there are 3 different colors. We have some that are small that are purple, some that are big, and it just adds to, you know, the fun of the animation. So what do we want to do now? We want to move them out of our view. So let me just sort of see where they're going to come down. So they're going to come down about here. So let me pull them all the way out of shot. So we want them to fall down and we want them to interact with our text. So this is where we can introduce ourselves to some dynamics inside of Cinema 4D, which is, you know, probably one of the most fun things to just sort of play with. And so the way that we set up dynamics is we use Cinema 4D tags. And so when you have certain objects selected, we can come up to our tags here and we can see a whole bunch of tags, whether it's for, you know, materials, for rigging, for like rendering. We can also get them if we just right click. So I'm going to right click on, let me just name these. So this is going to be our sphere cloner, and this is going to be our text cloner, just so I know which is which. And so on my spheres, I'm going to right click, and our dynamics can be found under our simulation tags. And we have a bunch of different options. So we have things that are rigid bodies, we have soft bodies, we can create colliders, and we can create cloth. We're not going to worry about half of those. We're just going to worry about rigid body and then creating some collisions. And so what we want to do, we want our spheres to be affected by collision objects and by gravity and by forces within our scene. And so what we need to do is we need to choose to make it a rigid body. We need to tell Cinema 4D, okay, look, all of these clone spheres, we want them to have a rigid body dynamics tag. So I'm just going to select that, and I'm not going to change anything. And what we're going to do, I'm going to press play. And then we can see they're now all falling and being affected by gravity. And also when they hit each other, they will interact with each other as well. However, they are falling through our text. We don't want that. We want them to interact. And so what we need to do, we need to tell Cinema 4D that, okay, so now we have our rigid body spheres. We also need to tell it what dynamics we need on our text. And for this, we're going to then come to our text cloner, right click, look at simulation tags. And so we don't want to make a rigid body, even though we want it to be dynamic. We don't want it to be falling through the sky, just like our spheres are. But we do want it to work with collisions, and we want our spheres to hit it and to collide with it and then kind of like bounce off. And so all we need to do is select a collider body. And again, I'm not going to worry about any settings. I'm just going to leave it at the default. And as you press play, now what happens is our spheres come down and they're interacting and landing with our text and on our text. And it's looking okay, like it's okay, but I kind of want to add some more kind of fun and bounce to this animation. And so what I can do inside of my dynamics tag, so as you know, if you click on certain objects, you get your attributes manager down here. It's the exact same if you select any of your kind of tags that are on your object. So I can select my material and get those settings, and I can select my dynamics and get my settings. Under my collision tab, we have these wonderful little settings down here. Bounce, friction, collision noise. And so at the moment, my bounce is set to 5 and my friction is set to 90. And so what's happening is my spheres are landing and we're not getting much bounce, and they're sort of, because we have such a high friction value, they're remaining on the surface of our text, which could be the look and the style that you're after. If so, cool, leave them like that. But for me, I want to add some bounce and I want them to be kind of flying around a little bit more, so they look a little bit more fun. So I'm just going to kind of switch these values. Maybe we go like 75 and 15. And some of this is just tweaking and seeing what it looks like. And as we kick this off, we can see that we're getting so much more bounce happening. And as our text and our MoGraph kind of text is moving around, we're still getting some of that cool animating movement. And that was literally the entire setup for this here. Just with, you know,
awesome.
a couple of lights, a couple of textures, and it comes out looking quite nice.
That's very cool, Elly.
Thanks. And yeah, my textures. I was, look how lazy I was with my textures. All I did was change the color. But I love it. I love how these textures look together. They're such good colors. There
were a couple questions, things that might have gone by sort of quick that we missed.
Oh yeah, sure.
Can you, so is there a uniform scale option in the random effector? If there is, can you show us that?
Yeah, sure. So let's go into the random effector. Let me switch that off again, just hide myself out of the way. Yes, so inside of the random effector, if I just pull this up, inside of our parameters, we can switch on our scale, and then you just have to switch on uniform scale. Otherwise, you can scale on each individual axis, which is also comes in handy. But for the sakes of this, yeah, I just wanted to uniform scale them about 0.3.
Also, Shay asked, where again did that formula come from, and how did you link it to the cloner?
Yeah, cool. So let me go back into this, like this one here, get rid of that. So let me switch all this off for now, just so we can really see this. So the Formula Effector, so what I did, so let's just delete it, but why not? So the way that we can set this up is, because I want it to be affecting my fracture, I need to make sure I have my fracture selected, because we get a slightly different result as we saw previously if we put it on the cloner. So if my fracture is selected, all I need to do is come into my effectors, and this is where we can find a whole bunch of effectors that do a wide range of amazing things. And here's the formula. So if we grab this formula, I was wondering, I was waiting for it to kick in. Okay, and everything's gone a little bit crazy, and that's because we need to just adjust a few things first. And so all I did was I switched off my scale, and all I needed it to do was affect some of my position, so we get that cool looking animation. So let's just go like 80. And then basically what's happening is this formula is taking the parameters inside of here and then taking our project time and frequency. And because I put it on my fracture, it's going to animate that without me having to worry about any kind of keyframing. And I think, you know, we can slow it down again or completely stop it, apparently. We can slow it down by reducing our frequency as well as speeding it up by going the other direction. And because I don't like—
You didn't have to do any math? You didn't have to do any math, the sine wave thing that was already done for you?
Oh, no, that's default.
Oh.
So this comes in as default. You know, we can, like, as we looked at, we can have a look inside of the documentation and, you know, learn all about the lovely formulas if you would like to.
Nope.
But nope, by default, it comes in like that. Thank God. Thank God for me, at least.
Is there a full rendered version of this in the in our shared files?
There is not, but I can put it in there.
That'd be great. Some people are
Oh,
asking if there's because the playback isn't very smooth.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will upload the final, and I'll do the scene file as well, because why not?
Thanks, Elly.
No worries. Cool. So
Great.
is it back to you, Chad, for some cool stuff?
Okay. Yeah. So we're just gonna thank you, Elly and Darrin. That was amazing, and gave us a lot to chew on and play with. That's so exciting. I'm gonna close up here, but I wanted to show like one final thing. Oh wait, can I steal the screen back from you really quick?
Yeah, sure. Take it.
Okay. Boom. Are you seeing this? Okay.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, so just like really quick as we leave, I just wanted to show like one thing just very quickly. In week 2, I showed how to make this thing, and a lot of this was using techniques that Darrin showed us in week 1, like how to use the landscape object to make landscapes, and also how to use vault lights to create kind of like fog and such. And we created these arches. And so I wanted to kind of like play with this scene a little bit more. And we've talked through this whole month. I mean, the whole month has been, you know, C4D Lite for After Effects users. And we've said that, you know, you can't render directly from C4D Lite. You need to like go into After Effects. And that's true, but not the entire story. There is another way to render your C4D Lite stuff. And that is using the Unreal Engine. So, which is also free. So all this stuff is free, and you don't need any kind of extra anything in order to make this work. And so what I did is I took this same file from week 2, and I loaded it into Unreal Engine and kind of like, you know, fiddled with it a little bit. And let me go ahead and go my default viewport here and go ahead and play this. And then now I have this world that I can go and literally like jump and run and play and frolic in that was made in Cinema 4D Lite. So, you know, there's a lot you could do. And then of course you can go into, not of course, but you could also go into the sequencer and you could, you know, make this cinematic and render this and get high quality renders with depth of field and everything else out of Unreal Engine. So just another thing to play with and be aware of that that exists. So
cool. I love that you did that.
Fun, right? I don't know. It was really, really cool to be able to like make something in this light tool, this kind of like tool that is kind of, you know, watered down and limited, but to create a world and then to go jump and play in it and explore it is pretty fun. It's pretty fun. So I'm glad that Maxon and Epic, you know, they give these tools away that you can just have just such a blast with. There's like a lot you can do. So anyways, Elly and Darrin, thank you so much for all the hard work that you put into this thing all month long, and all the cool examples that you created and the techniques that you showed us, and everything. And it's been really fun. And thank you for all of you who have been attending and showing up, and for all of your great questions that have like pushed this thing forward and kept us on track and things. So it's been just like a really great experience. I really loved it.
A lot of fun.
Yeah,
Hope to see you in our. Oh yeah, thanks. And excited to see Elly's thing Wednesday. So it's like this is kind of like the after party, if you want to look at it that way. So hope to see all of you then and on our next things. And yeah, I think that's it, right?
Yeah, that's everything. It's
Okay.
been a pleasure though, guys, as always. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's been lovely. You both are the best. All right, thanks everyone. Take care, and we'll see you hopefully Wednesday and in the future. Bye.
Bye, everyone.